going to share my story of struggling with depression and anxiety for the last 20 years. So I am going to be brutally honest in this video, and I'm going to talk about some things I have never discussed with anyone, because I am hoping that by being super vulnerable and really opening up about this topic, that I can help people out there right now who are struggling, especially at this time of year, January, February, especially in the UK. I know that the suicide rates are super high during these months. So I'm hoping that by sharing my story, it might provide some much needed hope and just something that people can relate to so they don't feel just as alone right now. Basically, depression robbed me of all my teenage years and all my 20s. And it's now only in my 30s I've actually managed to get my shit together and actually heal my depression and completely transform my life in a very short space of time. Once I started focusing my energy in a positive direction, I'm actually quite shocked at how quickly I managed to turn things around. And as I talk you through this journey, I'm going to reflect back on my life and my experience with this disease, and I'm going to highlight to you key things that I have learned about this illness that have really helped me with my healing. So this is part one of a two-part series, and next Sunday I'm going to release part two, and that is going to go into the specifics about how I actually managed to heal my depression. So let's take things back to primary school. In my early childhood, everything was going really well. I had lots of friends at school, I was popular at school, I was doing really well with my schoolwork, I was always top of the class. I was a confident child and I was happy. But then the last year of primary school, so probably about around age 11, I can remember some people in my class made certain comments about my physical appearance. And in that moment, something snapped in my head. I feel like when you're a child, you go through a certain amount of time when you're not really conscious about how you look. You're literally just bothered about playing with your toys, being with your friends. You don't give a damn about how you look. And then when you get to a certain age, all of a sudden something changes and it dawns on you how you compare to others, how your features match up to others. And when those people made those comments, that's exactly what happened to me. But like I said, something switched within my head and I took it to an extreme extent. That incident was the catalyst that started my obsession with my physical appearance. And I just felt like I really, really needed to change myself. Like I needed to change myself immediately. And I felt that I was different, I wanted to fit in, and to be honest, I felt ugly. And the years that preceded that incident, those years were spent constantly ruminating over my physical appearance and what I needed to change about myself. And I can remember spending so much time locked away in my bedroom, looking in the mirror and just feeling increasingly down about myself. I would say this is when my body dysmorphia started. Obviously, negative comments about your appearance are never nice at any age, but I feel like some kids might have been able to brush it off a bit more than I did, but I really took it to heart. This actually still affects me to the present day. I've come a long, long way, but focusing on my appearance and wanting to change my physical appearance, it still affects me to this present day in some way. Some particularly sad stories that I can think of when it comes to this. So I can remember for my 21st birthday, I was meant to be going out with a group of girlfriends and we were going out on a night out to Blackpool. I got ready and I felt that ugly that I didn't go out and I had to let them down. Another time that I can remember that makes me feel really sad, I can remember one time with my first boyfriend that I had, we were going out for a meal one evening, and again, I got ready. I can remember I used to spend so much time getting ready, like so much time putting on all this makeup, doing my hair loads of crazy ways, and now it doesn't take me that long to get ready. Literally, it'll take me like 10 minutes to do my makeup, and I don't barely do anything with my hair. But yeah, I used to spend so long getting ready, and on that night, I spent so long getting ready, and I can remember I looked in the mirror and I just felt so ugly. I couldn't go out, and I had to tell him that I just didn't want to go out. And that, especially with the 21st birthday, like not going out on your 21st birthday because you feel so ugly, I just think that is so, so sad. So looking back, what I learned about this is that generational trauma is real. So although I said I was confident, I was happy at school, I made lots of friends, at home with my parents give me so much love. They gave me a lot of time. Literally, my mum quit her job. My dad went out working so that my mum could spend every minute of every day with us. So we got that love and attention. But my mum didn't have the best childhood, and her father used to call her stupid and ugly when she was a child. So until this day now, my mother is 66 years old and she still calls herself ugly and stupid. I think my mother saying that about herself in front of me and my sister has had profound effects on our mental health, and it had detrimental effects to my self-love. Hence, when those kids called me those names, that extreme reaction that I had to it, I think that was triggered by the environment that I was in and by the behaviour that I'd been seeing my mother display. So I was literally just waiting for that trigger to snap, and it did that day when I received those negative comments. Although I believe that my self-love has been impacted by my mother, I do not blame her for this. This literally goes on in all families. This generational trauma gets passed from person to person, and my mum has done the best given the circumstances. I cannot imagine being called ugly and stupid by my father. I cannot imagine the hurt that caused my mother. So now it is up to me to break that generational trauma by working on myself and healing myself and making sure that I do not pass that on to any future children that I may have. So then I went to secondary school. The first year of secondary school, high school, when I was about 12 years old, this is when I started picking my skin. So I know everyone grows up, they get to teenage years, they get a few spots. I actually developed acne on my face because I was so focused on my physical appearance. I started putting makeup on from a very young age and caking makeup on my skin. I don't know if that caused my acne or whether it was just hormonal. But yeah, I started to get spots, but I picked those spots to a severe extent. And this is when my skin picking disorder started. I've done videos on my channel that go into detail about my skin picking disorder, but in recent years, I've actually ended up hospitalising myself with this skin picking disorder because I've picked my skin that much that I've caused abscesses and had to be admitted to hospital. So yeah, this was the start of my skin picking disorder. And what I can say is that when I look back, this disorder was caused by anxiety and low mood. Literally, I can remember getting home from school and I would go straight into the mirror in the bathroom and I would pick my skin for hours. But I would pick it to the extent that I would have like scabs on my face, and I'd pick the scabs off and I'd have scars. And literally, I have got scars all over my body now. I've got them on my face, my neck, my chest, my shoulders, my arms, my belly, my back, my legs. I've got scars all over from this disorder. Another thing that I realised is that I used to think self-harm was literally taking a razor blade to like your wrists. But what I realised is, looking back over my life, self-harm can come in many, many forms. And this was the start of my self-harm. Skin picking is a form of self-harm. I was mutilating myself and I was putting myself in danger by picking my skin to this extent. The way that skin picking works, it's the same pattern as self-harm. The pattern for self-harm is that anxiety and low mood causes you to harm yourself because it's a stress release. You then look at what you've done, the damage that you've done. That creates even more stress and low mood and shame. And then you go back into harming yourself again, and the cycle continues. There's so many ways that you can cause harm to yourself. Eating disorders, skin picking, alcohol, drugs, gambling. All these things are causing harm to ourselves mentally and physically. Another thing that I realised that's really sad is that fixating on certain features and certain parts of my body and hating those parts of me so much, the low mood and anxiety that was caused by this hatred for certain parts of my body, that then caused me to destroy other parts of my body that were perfectly fine. So for example, with my skin, I did have some spots, but if I'd just left those spots, my skin would have been completely fine. But the low mood from hating other areas of my body, that caused me to take it out on my skin, and therefore I end up with loads of scars all over my body. And then I've got another area of my body that I'm then fixating on that needs to be fixed. Another example of this is that I actually had a boob job. I didn't need a boob job. I didn't need breast implants. Like, my boobs, they were small, but they were absolutely fine. The decision to have my breast implants put in was impulsive and completely stupid. Last year, I actually had my breast implants removed because they're now banned worldwide and they're causing women cancer, and women are dying from this cancer. And now I've got 2 scars on my chest from having them removed. I've also done multiple videos on my breast explant journey. You can see those on my channel. So again, this is another example of how me getting obsessively down about certain features on my body has caused me to destroy multiple other areas of my body that were completely fine, that didn't need touching. So a key thing I've learned here is that focusing on the external will never fix you. I spent the last 20 years on this mission to be beautiful because I thought being prettier, getting more attention, getting more validation, I thought that would make me feel better. Getting plastic surgery, getting fillers, being skinnier, I thought this would all fill that void within me and make me feel better. But do you know what? Those external things, they didn't even put the tiniest scratch on that void that was within me that needed filling. They literally give me a quick dopamine hit, and that was it. They never in any way helped my anxiety and depression. In fact, it just got worse as the years went on, and the more that I did myself, the worse it got. And in fact, what I needed to do all those years ago was look internally and start doing that healing work on my trauma. So then I hit age 17, and this is when shit really started to hit the fan, and I really lost my way. So up until that point, even though I had my picking disorder and I was fixating on my physical appearance, I was still able to make friends. I was still confident externally. I was still doing really good with my schoolwork. I got A stars and A's across the board at GCSE. But then I went to sixth form, I went to college, and then for some reason I really started to fixate on the fact that I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do career-wise in my life. I'd started doing art, psychology and English at A level, and I just thought, where are these subjects going to take me? Even though I was quite passionate about those subjects, especially art, I was really passionate about that subject. So I quit my A levels. I then went to work in a supermarket for a while. I then restarted my A levels. I picked maths, law and business. I hated that. That didn't work out. I quit those as well. And then I ended up spending quite a long amount of time, I can't remember how many months, but it was quite a long period of time at home doing nothing. Around this time, I just felt like an absolute failure. Like literally all my friends, they'd done their A levels, they were going on to uni, and there was me, like my life was falling apart. And what didn't help is that at this time, I'd also developed my eating disorder. So my eating disorder started at around the age of 17, and it was triggered by an incident when I saw this girl out on a night out, and apparently my ex-boyfriend, he had cheated on me with her. And I saw this girl, she was so thin, she was so skinny, and she had huge boobs. And again, something snapped in my head in that moment, and I thought, I need to look like that. And literally that night I went home, and the next day I can remember my mum made me my dinner. She made me pasta, and I poured like half the pasta into the bin to get rid of it. And I felt like so pleased with myself for doing that. So yeah, on my mission to be beautiful and to try and fill this growing void that was inside of me, I'd now decided that me being as skinny as possible was the thing that was going to make me happy. I didn't do these things consciously. Literally during this period of my life, I was literally on autopilot. I was at the mercy of my toxic, nasty mind that was literally beating me down every day. And you know, during this time, I didn't even realize that I had anxiety and depression. I didn't realize the solution to my problems was that I needed to show myself self-love. and that I needed to be kind and gentle with myself. In the 90s and 2000s, self-love, depression and anxiety, I didn't really have social media. Like, these things weren't widely talked about like they are now. So I was just trundling through life the best I could, surviving the best I could on a daily basis, trying to get through my teenage years. So along with the coping mechanism of looking externally for solutions, another one of my coping mechanisms was to punish myself. So the hurt that I was feeling, the anxiety, the low mood, I would take it out on myself, and that would be a release. I would beat myself down for not being good enough. So around this age of 17, that's when I got into alcohol, and I started really abusing alcohol. Literally, I was anorexic, I was thin as a rake, I would literally not eat all day. And then I'd go out in like the tiniest of outfits because I wanted to show off my really thin body to the max. And I would literally drink double vodka Red Bulls all night. It just seemed like I was finding more and more ways to destroy myself. And I would drink that much that I'd be sick. Or I can remember when my head hit the pillow, sometimes I felt that drunk that I literally thought, I'm scared that I'm not going to wake up tomorrow. I'm scared that I'm going to die in my sleep. That's how drunk that I used to get. I used to put myself in some really precarious situations as well. So I'd go off with people that I didn't know, and I was really putting my safety in jeopardy. But on reflection, I didn't give a damn about myself. Literally, I was harming myself with my eating disorder, with my skin picking. I was abusing my body. I was literally mutilating it, starving it, and then drowning myself in alcohol 4 nights a week. I would go out Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. A lot of what drove me to go out, to be completely honest, was to go out and get attention. Like I said, I'd go out in these tiny outfits. I was super skinny. I wanted to show off my body and what I'd achieved starving myself, which now when I look back is absolutely awful. And I was craving it so desperately, but it's because I wasn't giving it to myself. I could have given myself those things, but I chose not to. I didn't know how to. So then at age 21, I went to uni. And to be honest, things had started to turn around in a more positive way. I'd gotten in at a college, studied a business diploma, got a distinction, so got the highest level of qualification. I'd then got onto a really competitive business management uni course. And yeah, it seemed that things were starting to turn around for me. However, before I went to uni, my grandma, who I was really close to, she passed away. And also an incident happened when I was working at the bank before I went to uni. An incident happened and it has literally changed my life forever, and I've never been the same again. We were doing the morning huddle as we usually did every day, and even though I had very little self-love and my anxiety was mounting in various ways, outwardly the way that I presented myself, I was super confident, and literally you could have stood me up on a stage with no script in front of thousands of people and I wouldn't have had one bit of nerves. I'd have just absolutely winged it, and that situation wouldn't have fazed me. But on that morning in the group huddle, it suddenly came to me to speak and I panicked. That was my first experience with a panic attack. I had a mild panic attack, and I can remember that I went red, my mind went blank, and I could not wait for my boss to start speaking to the person next to me and for the limelight to be off me. From that day, I then developed this fear. I was absolutely petrified of public speaking. But that couldn't have come at a worse time, because my uni course that I got onto, it was literally like The Apprentice come Dragon's Den. It was so intense. The people on that course were uber confident. Like, I've never seen confidence levels like it. And they were all extroverted, and literally my powers have been stolen from me. I used to be like them literally a month ago, and now I was crippled with this anxiety about public speaking and about generally even just speaking up in class in front of people. That was hard for me. But on this course, I couldn't avoid public speaking. Literally every second week we were doing a presentation in front of all the class, or in front of the whole cohort of 40 people, and say some other guests as well. We were doing presentations and public speaking all the time, and I cannot tell you how much I struggled. I cannot believe I made it through to the end of that course. I did actually make it through and I got a first class degree, and I am so proud of myself for that. But yeah, that period of my life was so hard. That what happened in the bank when I experienced my first moment of panic. Again, something in my mind just snapped in that moment. There seems to be a common pattern throughout my life when my mind has snapped. It snapped when I saw that girl when I developed my eating disorder. It snapped at the bank when I experienced my first feeling of panic. And it snapped when those kids made those comments about my physical appearance when I was at primary school. Honestly, at uni, I just felt like the odd one out. I felt like I was weak, I was defective, I felt like I was weird. But looking back now, thinking those things, that does not help the situation. Thinking those things is the reason that you're in that situation, is the reason that you feel down, that you feel depressed. Again, I was beating myself up. I was punishing myself every day, saying and believing these awful things about myself that weren't true. Again, during this time, I didn't have any help or any support. I just carried on the best that I could using these defective coping mechanisms of mine. I still continued to drink. I'd go out at least 4 times a week, getting absolutely obliterated as usual. And it was actually after one of these really boozy nights, it was probably the 4th night on a row that I'd been out. After that night, in the early hours of the morning, I actually ended up experiencing a full-blown panic attack. And that was so scary. I literally thought I was dying. I rang up my uni hall's reception and told them that I thought I was dying and that they needed to call an ambulance. So what I've learned reflecting back on what was happening at this age, I did actually go for 1 therapy session. So uni provided free counselling sessions and I went for 1 session and I gave it up. And I've noticed throughout my journey with depression, this is a common theme for me. I'll try something once and then I convince myself it's not going to work and I gave it up. But what I've learned is on this journey, especially recently, you need to be consistent with things. You need to give things a fair chance. If you don't give things a fair chance, if you don't attempt something a fair amount of times, these things, they take a while for the positive effects to kick in. It's like going to the gym. You're not going to get weight loss and be building muscles within a week, 2 weeks. It takes a month. So with these things like counselling, you have got to go more than once. You can't give up after going just the 1 time. Also at university, I tried medication for the first time. So I tried antidepressants. I took these for a period of 2 weeks and they made my anxiety that bad that I had to quit them, and I have never taken antidepressants again. I couldn't get through that. Like, my anxiety was already so bad, and then taking them heightened it to an extent that I couldn't function on a day-to-day basis, so I had to stop those. I think medication can be useful, especially if you're at crisis point, to really calm you down. But I don't think medication is the solution long term necessarily. I think sometimes when you take medication, you don't end up doing the actual healing and getting to the root of your problems. So at the age of 24, I graduated uni and I landed my first full-time corporate job. But I was in an industry and job role that I had zero passion for. Because I was lost, because I didn't know what to do, I just ended up in this job. God knows how I ended up there, but yeah, I had zero passion and motivation to do this job. To be honest though, it's not that I just had zero motivation to do this job. Looking back now, I had zero motivation for life. I was just not happy, I was miserable, and I was lost. I ended up really failing at this job. And I felt a lot of shame for that. And I just felt like a complete failure once again. Also during this time, I had an on-off serious relationship. And that ended with me finding messages that proved my boyfriend had been cheated on me. So yeah, that didn't end well. Any relationships that I had had so far ended in people cheating on me. It was at this point in my life at 26 that I think I had some sort of quarter-life crisis. And I can remember thinking to myself, if I died tomorrow, literally, what have I done with my life? because like I said, from the age of 12, I've been miserable every day of my life nearly, and I've just completely wasted my life with bad mental health. My career is going nowhere. So I came up with this idea that I was going to go traveling. I was going to go solo backpacking. So once I decided to do that, I had to save the money, and I ended up staying in a couple of horrible rundown houses whilst I lived in Derby and worked to save for this travelling. Literally, when I think about these houses now, it just makes me shiver because they were just so old and horrible and on skanky streets, and I don't think that did my mental health any good at the time. I don't think that made me feel any better, to be honest, but it helped me save a large amount of money in a short period of time. When I look back on this period of my life, at the time I was just thinking, God, I'm a failure, I'm lazy, I'm a loser. But do you know what? I wasn't lazy, I wasn't a failure. I was just really struggling with my mental health, and I was really lost, and I really needed some support. So then I hit the age of 27 and I decided to go traveling. In March 2016, I boarded a plane to Bangkok on my own to do solo backpacking. I spent 6 months in Southeast Asia, and then I went to Australia and lived there for 3 years. So even though my confidence was shattered in some areas of my life, I have always been super independent. So I knew I would have the confidence to go traveling on my own. And when I got there, I was absolutely fine. I was hardly ever on my own. I made friends really easily, and I had an absolutely amazing time. But one thing that I will say is that I can remember thinking clearly, going traveling is going to reveal the answers to me that I'm searching for. When I go traveling, I'm going to find my purpose. It's all going to start making sense. It's going to heal me. And you know what I realized? Your issues, your anxiety and depression follows you everywhere. It will even follow you to the other side of the world. Traveling was not the solution to my problems. Again, I was looking externally for the solutions. I was running away and not looking internally and doing the work. Also, when I got to Australia, I continued to do jobs that I weren't interested in, that were way below my skill level and that were monotonous and boring, and I continued to fail at my jobs. And again, this just compounded these thoughts about myself, that I was useless, that there was no hope for me, that I was now heading into my 30s and the ship had passed me by and I'd wasted my potential. This was my daily thoughts at the time. It's also during this time that a couple of my friends in Australia made comments about me being quite negative, and one of my friends pointed out that she thought that I probably had depression. So yeah, being pointed out as a person that was negative, that wasn't great, and I understand it's not fun to be around a negative, depressed person. But again, I was struggling and I just didn't know how to turn things around. I just felt like I was stuck like that. Another major thing happened to me when I was in Australia. There was a couple of major incidents that happened when I was over there. The first major incident was that I got admitted for the first time to hospital because of my skin picking. So when I was working on the farm in Australia, I got a spot on the side of my face and I picked it that bad that it turned into an abscess. I had to go to hospital and get it drained. And literally the doctor said that I was really lucky, because if you get abscesses on your face or neck, you are at a really high risk of getting blood poisoning, and that blood poisoning will go straight to your brain and you can die. So literally I had like a plaster on my face for like 2 weeks. And that was a real low point for me. That was massive. Like, the shame from doing that was huge. And I promised myself I would never, ever do that again. Side note, I actually did end up doing it again in recent years. When I got back to the UK during COVID, I ended up picking my leg that bad that I got admitted to hospital again, and I had abscesses tracking down my leg. I've also done a full detailed video on this, so click on that at the top of the screen if you want to watch that video. Something that I learned here, reflecting back, was that this just shows how deceiving social media can be, because to the outside world, me going to Australia, I was posting all these great photos, going to the beach, going to all these different places, and people were like, wow, Gabrielle, I'm so jealous. It looks like you're having such an amazing time. And while there were moments of goodness within that, for the most part, I was feeling miserable, lost, and rubbish things continued to happen to me. I was like a magnet for like toxic things or stuff going wrong. Okay, then we get to my 30s, and this is the age where I had my ultimate rock bottom, and this is what triggered my healing journey. So throughout my time in Australia, I'd had some pretty crap experiences with guys. For the first time, I'd ended up attracting narcissists into my life. First, I was seeing an overt narcissist, and that quickly came to a dramatic end. Then I went into the arms of a covert narcissist. And the covert narcissist, you don't see them coming because they're all quiet, they look all sweet, but literally they're the ultimate wolf in sheep's clothing. And the way that relationship ended, literally I was with this guy for 10 months. Throughout those 10 months, there was no chance of him meeting my needs. 100 red flags were whacking me in the face that I ignored. And this was because I was desperate to be loved and desperate not to be on my own. Now, this void within me was like absolutely humongous. You've got to think from the age of 12 up until 30, I have never, ever given myself any love or any kindness. I just continued to harm myself, to punish myself, to beat myself down. So this void was absolutely huge. And when it came to relationships, I would overlook red flags because I was just desperate to hold on to someone. Whatever crumbs of love and attention I could get, I was there hanging on for dear life to collect those crumbs. And basically this relationship came to a point and it came to a catastrophic end. So it ended in me finding messages on his laptop. Whilst he was at work, he'd messaged this prostitute and asked for an hour of her time. She then got back to him and said she wasn't in Melbourne, and he said, oh, when will you next be back? So those are the messages that I found, and I found a picture of the prostitute as well. And it was just an absolute shock because I thought she'd look like some blown up Barbie doll girl, and she didn't. She was quite an older lady. She was pretty overweight and she looked quite rough. No offense to this lady because she was just doing her job. But this guy that I was dating, he was a young 30-year-old. He was very handsome. I was just completely shocked that he was leading this other life. So that day when I found the messages, I confronted him and I moved out of our brand new apartment. We'd only been in it for about 2 weeks. I moved out, and thankfully my cousin lived in Melbourne and he told me to come and stay with him. So I stayed with him for the remainder of my visa, and I'm so thankful for my cousin. The pain from that situation was immense. It felt like my life was an absolute nightmare and I had suffered so much. And it suddenly dawned upon me that I needed to make a serious change in my life because I was really scared of what the universe would serve up for me next if I didn't learn from my mistakes. I recognised there was a pattern, especially with my relationships. They were getting increasingly worse in terms of how dramatic and toxic they were. I was literally at the point where I was like, if I don't heal myself, if I don't make some changes, I'm thinking that maybe the next relationship I'm in, I could end up being like physically abused or something. So at that point, I decided enough was enough. I could not take any more pain and suffering. Something had to change, and that something was me. The common denominator in all this was me. So I decided to sign up for therapy again. I decided to give it another go, and I actually completed 8 to 9 sessions. I did the full course. During the time that I was doing those therapy sessions, after the therapy, when reflecting back on it, I had some huge epiphanies about my life, and those epiphanies were absolutely life-changing. I'm going to do a separate video on those epiphanies and go into detail, but basically, to sum it up, I realised that I was the cause of all my pain and suffering. It was through my bad decisions that I'd ended up in this situation. I realised that I liked to harm myself and that suffering was my comfort zone and that's what I was used to. And that basically I was hell-bent on destroying myself and my life. So what I learned at this age from hitting that ultimate rock bottom is that your pain and suffering can actually be your greatest gift. Because in that moment, the pain was that much. I was that tired of suffering every single day that it caused once again something to snap in my brain. But this time the snap was a positive snap. And from that point onwards, I have been propelled onto this path of healing. So yeah, your pain and suffering can be your greatest gift, because I'd say 9 times out of 10, there's always something positive that comes out of your pain. So guys, I'm going to conclude this video. 30 was the age when I woke up, when I started to question all my thoughts, all my behaviors, and all my actions. And I am shocked how quickly things turned around in my life once I started focusing all that energy in a positive direction. That energy that I used to put into feeling miserable, to worrying, to feeling stressed, to beating myself down, when I applied that positively, I cannot believe how quickly things turned around. I literally thought I was broken. I spent 20 years repeating these really negative patterns of behavior, and I honestly thought I was broken, and that was just me. I was just negative. I was just down. That's how I was as a person. But I'm here to tell you, no, there is no permanent version of yourself, and things can always change, but you have got to start making those changes. No one's going to do it for you. No one is going to save you, and you are not going to find the answers externally. You have to look inwards. I know it's hard, but you have to look inwards and face your pain. Thanks for listening, guys. Next week, I'm going to take you through the exact steps that I took to heal my depression. These are really simple things that I have implemented into my life that have made a huge difference, and I'm going to take you through my healing journey and the ups and downs of it. Okay guys, thanks for listening. If you found this video useful, don't forget to like and subscribe.